Welcome to the September edition of the Leadership Series, where I interview a diverse range of leaders from the not-for-profit sector. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined this morning by Katherine Raskob. Katherine is the current CEO of the Fundraising Institute of Australia, a role that she's held for the last couple of years, and I think probably at the forefront of the impact of COVID-19. Welcome, Katherine, and thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to start if you could give us a little brief overview of the fundraising in FIA's activities at the moment. Thank you.
Sure. It's really an honor and a privilege to be interviewed by you, Liska. Thanks for having me to your CEO series. So as you mentioned, I am the CEO of Fundraising Institute Australia. We are the peak body for fundraising in Australia. Yep. And our members include charities of all sizes and types. So from the largest charities to the smallest who are fundraising for any or all of their revenue activities. So we've been around for more than 50 years, which is quite incredible.
I didn't realize that. I know we do a lot with each other, but I didn't realize you had been around for that long.
Yes, I think about 52 years ago, it started with a bunch of people getting together and saying, we need to have a professional body for fundraising because it's such a critical activity. Yeah. And there are no, professional development pathways. You don't go to university to be a fundraiser. So I think they were hot on the money more than 50 years ago. And of course, the same still holds true today. Yeah. But really what FIA are about are three things. One is advancing the professionalism of fundraising. So making sure that fundraisers are applying ethical best practice in their fundraising activities. Yep. That is really critical. Any professional body needs to grow and develop and learn and advance their skills so that the profession stays solid and sustainable into the future. So to be able to do that, we do have a professional development program. We are an institute and we provide professional development training, education, conference, events, mentoring, activities that actually do that. The other thing we do is advocacy for all of our members. So fundraising is actually not regulated at a national level, and even the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, while they regulate charities, they don't actually regulate fundraising. That happens at a state level. So one of the challenges that we've got as fundraisers is it's a very complex regulatory environment in fundraising. The regulations happen at each state level and they're not harmonized, so they're all different. And of course, these days we fundraise in all kinds of manner, including online across the country and the world. Yeah. That makes it really challenging. So we do quite a lot of advocacy and also other areas that are particular to fundraising, such as data and privacy, the use of digital platforms, concessions for charities, including, for example, the do not call register that they're able to use as an exemption. So there's quite a lot of advocacy work as well. And so all of that is really to serve to protect the sector. And we believe that we have the social license to fundraise, that Australians give us that social license to be able to ask them for funds for all the causes that are in need. And in order to continue to do that into the future, we have to absolutely have best practice professional fundraising. So that's sort of FIA in a nutshell. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So that's quite a big responsibility, having a social license to engage with the Australian population. So CEOs lead from the front. And in the context of the introduction that you gave, what are the most important decisions that you make as a leader of your organisation?
Yes, I feel keenly the responsibility of leading both FIA, it's a small member body, as well as the sector at large. And so those two things do play on my mind a lot, and they are very challenging. Obviously, programs and services that a member organization can develop to keep their members engaged is really important. And also, making sure that because we are serving members at any time, we want to make sure that we're sort of serving them all the time with whatever they need, I guess. And I found that if I consider, for example, what most people would say about the major decisions, which is people and financial, I think they're equally important. But I found that, if you can sort of focus on those together, not one over the other, then all of the programs and services that you need to provide sort of come together, afterwards. So rather than go, right, we're a member body, what programs and services do we need to develop first? Think about who are the very best people I can get to deliver the kind of member engagement I want to have for my organization. And then, financially, are we solid enough to continue into the future? So I always feel that and we can talk about this in a minute, but the responsibility to my team in terms of their employment and their livelihoods, you know, I feel that really, really keenly. So, so those, you know, people I think are the most important aspects.
So talking about people, and we've already kind of alluded to COVID-19, have your people needed a different style of leadership from you in the last 6 months?
Yeah, definitely. And I think all of us who are managing organizations and teams will have felt that. You know, I'm a fairly open and modern, I feel I'm a modern leader, but even still, I think I do have some older style conservative tendencies, which is, you know, I'd love everybody to be in the office and working, you know, productively. And, you know, if I can see you and chat with you, I feel confident that things are going all right. I can check in with you. You know, I think those are things that most of us have clung to for a long time, leaders. And I found, and also this idea that you lead the way you lead and everybody comes along, right? But what I've discovered through COVID is that everyone manages their view of this pandemic and their own risk differently, and their needs differ so greatly. I only have 15 people on my team, and there are 15 different approaches.
And you know, Katherine, you've hit the nail on the head there, because I think personalisation around leadership is certainly something that's come through. You know, pre-COVID, it would be 70% standard approach, 30% the needs of the person. Whereas these days, I think that's been flipped. Has that been you? It's been kind of flipped on its head, you know, 30% standard, 70% highly personalised leadership needed. And if we move from that, you know, you've already said that you take your role as a leader of the sector and it weighs on you. How has COVID impacted your sector leadership?
Yeah, so on the issue of personalization, I think you're totally correct. I feel like it's much more in the high 80s, as in a personal approach to leadership for each of my team, meeting them where they're at today, where they might be differently tomorrow, you know, might act differently tomorrow. I think that kind of flexibility and personalized approach is so critical. I guess for the sector, I've discovered as a member body that actually FI can provide and prove even more value, because members who are charities who are struggling and feeling the impacts need us maybe more than ever. And also one of the things that they really need is, okay, I know my charity is struggling and I've got these issues, but what is everybody, you know, where is everybody else at? Am I alone in this? Or is my experience with this organization the same as what others are experiencing? So to be able to provide that kind of information sharing, knowledge.
Have you done that? Certainly something that peer-to-peer opportunity to do peer-to-peer conversations. Have you facilitated that? Because, you know, pre-COVID, to get 8 CEOs to sit around a table was nigh impossible because everyone's so busy. The one thing, because people aren't traveling as much, but that opportunity to have conversations with peers is something that's actually been valued. And I've been surprised at the level of take up, and all the things that I've hosted at that level have been fully subscribed. Have you found anything similar to that?
Yeah, totally. So a number of I have over 100 member organizations that are from charities that are fundraising under $500,000. So very small.
Yep.
They're across the country. And the CEOs of the organizations have come together a number of times. I've brought them together in Zoom and other sessions over the last couple of months to talk about the challenges from a CEO leadership space. And yeah, normally I'd probably be able to get a dozen, if that. But now, you know, it's 3 dozen, 4 dozen. And they love the opportunity to share not just amongst their own state, but also nationally, which is now, you know, more opportune because of technology and everything else that we can. I have found it a lot easier to engage with them.
And I think, you know, it'll be interesting to see. Well, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the old way. I think it's always going to be a jigsaw, and that this kind of communication that we're having today will always continue to have a place. So you've said that, in a way, the role of yourself and the Fundraising Institute is even more important. So have there been silver linings? Have there been any silver linings for your business?
I think for us, we have responded really quickly to some of the needs. That includes research, resources, tools, and other advice that potentially members would have not rung us up for if it was sort of in the context of regular business. But definitely in March and April, charities were really, really worried about what the future held, what their forecasts would look like, how they could convince their boards that you can't just slap an increase on fundraising and go, hopefully that'll work out all right. So we have been able to act really quickly and change some of the things that we were doing, which may have taken longer to really just, all right, let's just get this going. And also deep and personal member engagement as well. So I and my team, we spent months in the early part of the pandemic on the phone with members, sort of day and night. And I think they found that we were more accessible and approachable than ever before. And that was a great silver lining in terms of being the peak body and people feeling like they've got a resource in their life.
And really connected, because I think at the end of the day, associations and membership organisations, I think universally have been impacted, even coming into COVID, it certainly had been a changing landscape for association membership bodies. And one of the real values is that connection. That's what people are craving. So, kudos to you that you've done that, because that's only going to carry forward because people remember that. So, I think employment arrangements sort of going forward is going to be a bit of a puzzle piece of individual and business needs, as we've already talked about the idea of personalisation. So culture is going to be even more important, that we're not all going to be in the same place at the same time like in past. So as CEO, how do you shape and influence culture? And is it going to be different moving forward? Have you already adjusted? How do you think about culture now?
I've always felt that culture starts from the top, and I've worked for some amazing organizations where when the leadership and the board of an organization exhibited the kind of culture that they wanted the staff to have, like modeled it, then the staff did have that. And we did a huge project when I was at SBS to really shift the culture from a government sort of bound organization to a very modern multicultural media broadcasting organization. So I'm always fascinated by that. And also I do speak to members a lot, especially board members and CEOs of charities who are members, about if your board aren't embracing the kind of culture that you want to see, let's say in the case of charities, a philanthropic culture, then you're not actually able to achieve it. So when I joined FIA, I found that the board and the chair in particular at that time was incredibly confident and positive in my leadership, allowed me the scope to make the decisions that I needed to make and do the job that I had said I was going to do. And also very supportive. Often he would say, Katherine, can you let the team know I've noticed, the amazing work they've done, really helping me craft ways forward in terms of engaging team members so there wasn't as high a turnover. And the current chair, who's new, is also very much the same, and the entire board have this level of confidence and trust in me and the organization, and also excellent communication and support. And that then goes, since I feel that, then that goes to my management team, because the board is supporting me so I can support them in that way. And then hopefully that goes to the rest of the team. So absolutely modeling the leadership and culture behaviors you want from the top is so critical. That hasn't changed. I think that has remained the same. But I think what has changed because of COVID, and this is where it's also a silver lining for me personally, is the ability to deal in the gray. And we sort of alluded to a little bit about how you've got to change your approach. But I've never been totally black and white, but I've always had a slight tendency to black and white on occasion. And now I think what's required is this sort of really gray area, not having the answers, not knowing the way forward, helping the team who are struggling with the same issues, and including leaders of teams here at FIA who may have thought something earlier, but now have had to readjust their thinking and change their mind and deal a little bit in the ambiguity of we're not sure exactly what's going to happen. So being able to embrace a little bit of that, feeling more comfortable with it, because gray is so hard.
That's certainly something I've reflected, that ability to be comfortable in the space of grey. It takes time. I think nothing can rush that. And I think the other thing is, it's become okay to say, I don't know how it's going to be, but are you okay? and coming at people first from are you okay? And I'm sure there is a solution, and let's work out and let's find the solution, and we're going to do it together. That's certainly, I think, something that seems to be coming through. And because it was such a great leveler, everybody was in the same place, and everybody saw that as a human, we were on the same place. So when leaders said to their staff, I don't really know, but I'll come back to you. And did you increase the communication because you couldn't just go and chat to one person on the shoulder? There was more. Did you up your communication with staff?
Yeah, definitely. And you know how when you read the literature about leaders, a lot of them say that it's okay to be a bit vulnerable to your team, and that gives them a bit of empathy with you and inspiration. And I think you're right. COVID has leveled it so that I don't have all the answers. I don't know how it's going to go. And we bandy around words that are meaningless now, but in the beginning did, like unprecedented, blah, blah, blah. And I think what's really interesting is that it has been a leveler, and I've had to, rather than communicate, this is how it's going to go, this is what we're going to do, this is where, we're heading to, a lot of it is around more communication, but less, I've got no idea, more around, I don't really know exactly what it is, but I want to tell you that I'm thinking about it. I'm working with each of you, I'm talking, I'm listening, I'm doing all these things. So constantly communicating what you're doing in the absence of knowing, I think is really a comfort to people who maybe want you to have the answers, but understand that you can't.
Yeah. So, you've already talked about the amazing support that you've got from your board and how that level of support and endorsement makes you feel confident in your job, and then it cascades down, and I would agree 100%. So you've had a number of directorships over the years yourself, and currently with Girl Guides Australia. So rather than just a little bit more broadly than your own personal experience at FIA, what observation and what role do you think boards have in determining culture?
Yeah, I do think it's really so critical. And, the chair is obviously the first among equals on a board, but his or her approach and the way that they deal with board directors and the CEO in that sort of, respectful, trusting, confident approach, I think is such a critical thing. Girl Guides Australia is an amazing organization, but it's actually a federated structure. So their members are actually other girl guiding organizations around the country. And it's also over 100 years old. So it's very hard to shift and change cultures that have been in existence for a long time. And it takes, so much effort. It can't just be a bit of an afterthought. It has to be front and center on the agenda of every meeting, the discussion that takes place, the check-ins, the underlying, everything I think that a board does has to be cognizant of embracing and advancing the kind of culture it wants to see. Otherwise, it's never going to get there.
Yeah. Do you have any advice? I mean, you've spoken very positively about your current board engagements as a CEO and then sitting as a director. But for those CEOs that are listening to this that aren't necessarily getting that level of support, do you have any advice on how to change the dynamic of the conversation? Because sometimes it's really hard, because from a governance point of view, the strategy and the board sit, even from an org chart point of view, they sit above the CEO. And any advice for a CEO if they want to shift the dial?
So I have a marketing and comms background, so that's always my answer, to be honest. Because I think one of the challenges is that, and even when I first arrived at FI, I discovered this, because there's so much trust from the board to me and confidence, I probably didn't communicate as much about what I was doing. I was sort of seeking them out when there are problems or issues, because I thought, oh, they're busy people, I don't want to bother them, I can manage this. But actually, most boards will say, if you over communicate, if you think you're over communicating, double that and do it again. Because I think the board needs so much communication, positive and negative, and issues to manage. So for me, I think advice would be to, double, triple efforts on communication. And especially during this time, we have committees and, governance standards and all that kind of stuff, but basically just a number of communications around, I said it was going to go this way, it is going that way. I said I wasn't sure, still don't know, just checking in, wanting to give you this information or that, here's how the team is going. And also even volunteering, here's how I'm going, because I think a lot of times CEOs get sort of bashed around, and then nobody really...
You know, and Katherine, that's so true. I mean, wasn't it Carl Stefanovic that actually asked Gladys Berejiklian, and how are you? And you could see she actually went, that's probably the first time someone publicly has asked me how I am.
Yeah.
And at one of the CEO roundtables that I hosted, I was looking at some really tired faces. So I think it is, you know, to your point, it's good to let people know where you're at and ask for help if you need it. So what's your best habit?
Sleep. I think, and you know, you've seen world famous people like Arianna Huffington and others talk about, you know, the power of sleep.
Yeah.
For me, if I have a good night's sleep, my whole world is completely different. Now, because of the pandemic in particular, and also running an organization and leading the sector, there are times when I can't sleep well, but I prioritize it. I'm in bed by 10 o'clock every night, and I sleep until 6. So I have 8 hours of sleep wherever possible that I can. And I do all the right things, you know, shut off the social channels an hour before, have a cup of chamomile tea, or take a bath, whatever. I do whatever it takes so that by 10 o'clock I am really ready for sleep. And most of the time it works, and I feel wakeful, refreshed, ready for the day. And if I can't do that, it is really, really tough to make good decisions, to feel clear-headed, to be on top of it. So I prioritize sleep, 8 hours of sleep every night.
And it's interesting, I was reading an article the other day, and it said, if you don't feel great, delay making a decision, because you will make a better decision when you have, and most decisions can wait 24 hours. So to your point, there you go. We've talked a lot about the giving, you know, leaders give and they give. From whom and where do you draw your support and your inspiration as a leader?
From an inspiration perspective, I've had a lot of amazing managers over the years. And so I think about their leadership styles and what really worked for me when I was working with them. And also, maybe even more importantly, what didn't work, you know, the things that change, you know, like the way you felt when a manager or your CEO, you know, talked with you or lended you support or not, or respect or not. So a lot of that I consider carefully, and I try to take on those learnings. So past managers, CEOs, leaders have been really instrumental in terms of my own leadership style. I am a voracious reader of absolutely everything. So
what have you got to recommend?
No, like every leadership blog there is, I will just, every time one's on LinkedIn, I read it. You know, I love famous people like Warren Buffett and Bill and Melinda Gates and, you know, the Obamas and all those people. But also I find a lot of the our member charity CEOs are writing amazing things on leadership that you can see in the blogs and through LinkedIn posts and things like that. And I will take the time to read a lot of that because I think it's really important. And I know that webinars and Zoom calls and things have been a little bit overdone, obviously, at this time. But you know, when we started this conversation about connecting with other small charity CEOs and sharing, you know, I'm there to facilitate a discussion amongst members about dealing with the pandemic on the part of their charities, but we also end up talking about our own challenges running small organizations, and that has been very helpful for me. You know, you just pick up a few things, you go, oh yeah, I thought I was communicating a lot, but you know, this organization is actually doing something every day, once a week, with one of their team members, at least one of their team members directly on the phone, or all these things that you pick up and go, yeah, I could do more in that. So I take inspiration from thousands of places all over the world.
Well, there you go. And I think the question I'd like to sort of wrap up on is, what leadership decision are you most proud of?
Oh, this one is so hard. I still feel that as a leader, I have a lot of improvements to make. There's still so many ways I want to be a better leader, a stronger leader, you know, a leader with more clarity, I guess, of vision. So I can't actually think of one decision, but I think the most impactful decisions I've made as a leader are often around sort of the small things that you do. So making really good hiring decisions. And I feel really proud of the work I've done at FIA over the last 2 years to make incredible hires. And that has resulted in a very stable team of people who are very passionate about what they're doing, low turnover, which was different to when I arrived at FIA, and people who are really happy and comfortable and confident to come to work. So A lot of the decisions I've made around hiring, although not one decision I think have been really good decisions. I think regular communication with the team, again, if you think, oh, I've already told them that, well, you know, if you pick up the phone and just check in one more time or say one more thing, I think those are the kinds of decisions every day as a leader that you need to make to advance, you know, the kind of culture and environment and organization that you want to be leading.
And that circles back to where we started, doesn't it? Because I said, what are the most important things you do? And you said it's look after the people and the finances will take care of themselves. So I think it's quite opportune that we've kind of come the full circle. It's just been delightful to chat to you today. Thank you. You know, I really appreciate you finding 20 minutes to chat to me today, because I know how busy you are, because as we've just chatted about, there's a lot of communication going on in your world.
My pleasure, absolutely.
Yeah, so thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Bye.